Don't thank her. Don't you dare raise a glass to that lying, worthless parasite. My brother Lucas's voice ripped through the grand ballroom of the Bellevue estate, shattering the applause like breaking glass. Over 80 civic leaders, regional business executives, and decorated military officers froze, their champagne flutes hovering midair. I stood near the perimeter in my fitted dark blue army dress uniform, my right index finger capping an irregular rhythm against the seam of my slacks, a subconscious habit born from 8 years as Captain Clara Hayes, Senior Tactical Intelligence Officer with Special Operations Command. In my left coat pocket, my fingers closed tightly around a worn brass challenge coin stamped with the unit code 99 Delta, its metallic edges digging into my palm. On the elevated main stage stood Lucas in a $3,000 custom suit, next to my mother, Evelyn, who was clutching a microphone attached to a podium displaying a massive banner. Annual Hayes Foundation Gala, honoring Lucas Hayes for saving veteran housing. "Lucas, stop," I said quietly, keeping my posture rigid, using the flat, controlled tone honed during combat debriefings in Kandahar. "You sent me a priority message 2 hours ago saying Dad's estate executor needed my physical signature tonight on his final military pension documents." "I lied to bring you here," Lucas shouted into the sound system, his face red with theatrical outrage, as 75 wealthy donors watched in horror. Evelyn stepped up to the microphone beside him, her diamond-encrusted hands trembling with rehearsed maternal anguish. "It breaks my heart to say this," Evelyn said into the speakers, her voice echoing off the vaulted ceilings. "Clara has always harbored a bitter, toxic envy toward Lucas. While my son worked 20-hour days building a sanctuary for homeless heroes, Clara was sitting in comfortable administrative offices overseas, shuffling paper and drawing a government check. We can't all be leaders." A cold wave of hostile whispers swept through the room. High-profile donors in tuxedos exchanged disgusted looks. A local television crew covering the charity event turned their camera lens directly toward my face, capturing my steady, unblinking eyes. "She doesn't even have the decency to support her own brother," Lucas barked, taking 2 steps toward the edge of the stage. "Security, escort this embarrassment off the premises before she ruins our foundation's night." 2 heavy private security guards stepped from the entrance, closing in on my left and right flanks, but before their hands could touch my uniform jacket, a heavily decorated man sitting at the center head table set his heavy crystal glass down with a resounding thud and stood up. He was wearing an impeccably tailored Army service uniform adorned with 3 silver stars on each shoulder, Lieutenant General Robert Vance, Deputy Director of Defense Logistics. The entire ballroom fell into a suffocating silence. The 2 security guards froze instantly, turning their eyes toward the 3-star general in total shock. "Mr. Hayes," General Vance cut through the hall like a razor blade, quiet yet carrying the crushing authority of 40 years in command. "You might want to check the Federal Treasury routing numbers on your foundation's master build account before you order security to remove the intelligence officer who personally funded every brick in that housing project." Lucas's triumphant sneer vanished. Evelyn's hand tightened around the podium until her knuckles turned white. "General Vance?" Evelyn stammered into the microphone, her voice losing its polished veneer. I think you are mistaken. This is a private charity gala. Clara is just a low-level former clerk living off basic government handouts." General Vance ignored Evelyn completely. He turned toward me, snapped his boots together with a sharp crack, and brought his right hand up to his eyebrow in a crisp, unwavering military salute. "Captain Hayes, Operation Ghost Ledger has been fully executed by federal auditors. The floor is yours, ma'am." My mother blinked rapidly, her eyes darting between the general and my disciplined posture. "What operation? What is he talking about, Lucas?" Lucas didn't answer.
A thick bead of sweat ran down his temple, dripping straight onto his silk tie.
I stepped into the center aisle, my polished boots clicking against the polished hardwood. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a small silver encrypted flash drive, the twin to the brass challenge coin in my other hand. 3 years ago, I said, my voice projecting clearly without a microphone, my father, Colonel Marcus Hayes, died of service-related injuries. My mother informed me that his estate was broke, his medical debts exceeded $800,000, and that if I didn't sign over my military power of attorney to Lucas, our family's ancestral home would be foreclosed on. "Don't listen to her," Evelyn shrieked, her voice cracking as she leaned over the podium. "She is mentally unstable. She suffers from severe psychological trauma from her combat deployments. She's fabricating lies." I signed the military power of attorney, I continued, looking directly into my mother's wide, panicking eyes. And for 36 consecutive months, $10,000 a month was automatically deducted from my combat hazard pay, my disability trust, and my officer pension fund. I lived in a remote cabin wearing worn civilian clothes, eating basic rations, believing every dollar was preserving my father's memory and paying off his medical debt. "It was!" Evelyn yelled, her body shaking as she gestured wildly. "Every single penny went to his creditors." "Then why," General Vance spoke up, pulling a thick leather folder from his briefcase, "does the Department of Veterans Affairs audit reveal that Colonel Marcus Hayes' medical debts were fully settled by the federal government 4 years ago under Public Law 115? The silence in the ballroom was so heavy you could hear the soft hum of the stage lights. Evelyn froze. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. "You lied to me for 3 years, Mom," I said, my voice dropping into a cold, unbreakable frequency. "You told me Dad died in shame and debt. You sent me forged accounting receipts every month, signed with a fake bank stamp, just so you and Lucas could divert $120,000 a year of my combat pay into Lucas's private shell company." "Clara," Lucas stammered, stepping back from the microphone, holding his hands up defensively. "Clara, listen to me. It wasn't my idea. Mom said you were deployed in classified zones and wouldn't check state land registries. She said we needed the initial capital to build the Hayes Foundation reputation." "You coward!" Yukis screamed, turning around and striking Evelyn across the arm with her leather handbag. "You were the one who demanded the Porsche. You were the one who forged your sister's clearance code on the federal land grant applications." "I used her clearance because you said we owed her for taking care of Dad," shouted Lucas, shoving Evelyn's hands away, as 80 wealthy donors watched the mother and son rip each other apart like feral animals. Before anyone could intervene, I plugged the silver drive into the master AV podium at the side of the room. I keyed in my 6-digit military security pin, the exact code etched on the back of my brass challenge coin. The massive banner behind the stage automatically retracted, exposing a high-resolution projector screen. The screen flickered, instantly displaying a real-time federal forensic audit provided by the Defense Criminal Investigative Service, showing complete banking trees, offshore wire transfers, and verified digital signatures. Source account: Captain C. Hayes, combat hazard, military pension. Destination account: Lucas Hayes Private Holdings, Cayman. Total stolen funds: $432,000. Federal Land Grant Number 499-B, obtained via forged military security clearance. You told this room that Lucas raised $4 million to build housing for homeless veterans. Lucas didn't raise that money. He used my stolen military security clearance to apply for restricted federal defense land grants. He bought the land for pennies using my name, transferred ownership to his private company, and spent 90% of the donor money on luxury cars and private travel. "No, that land belongs to the foundation," Lucas screamed, his face contorted in absolute terror.
A forged military power of attorney executed against an active duty officer constitutes federal grand larceny and defense procurement fraud, Mr. Hayes, General Vance stated coldly. At that exact second, the grand double doors at the entrance of the ballroom burst open. 4 special agents from the Department of Veterans Affairs Criminal Investigative Service, accompanied by 3 state troopers, strode down the center carpet, their heavy tactical boots striking the floor in unison. The lead federal agent walked straight up the stage steps, pulling 2 red federal arrest warrants from his coat pocket. Evelyn Hayes, Lucas Hayes, you are arrested for federal wire fraud, multi-year military pension theft, defense procurement forgery, and criminal conspiracy.
Get your hands off me, Evelyn shrieked as a trooper pulled her hands behind her back, the sharp click-click of steel handcuffs locking around her wrists. Do you know who I am? I am Evelyn Hayes. I run this city's highest charity board. Your charity board, the agent replied indifferently, was frozen 2 hours ago following Captain Hayes's submission of sworn federal affidavits. Lucas offered zero resistance. He collapsed onto his knees on the stage floor, sobbing hysterically as the second officer cuffed his wrists behind his custom jacket. Clara, tell them to stop, please, Lucas wept, looking down at me from the stage in pitiful panic. We're family. You can't let them take your own brother to a federal penitentiary. I stood completely still, my head held high, looking at my brother with calm, unyielding dignity. You told everyone not to thank me, Lucas, I said softly, my voice carrying into every corner of the room. But I don't need your thanks. I just needed the truth. As the federal marshals escorted my mother and brother down the carpeted aisle past dozens of disgusted donors and flashing news cameras, General Vance walked over to my side. He didn't offer empty words of sympathy. He simply stood at attention and gave me another crisp, solemn nod of absolute respect. One by one, every military veteran, civic leader, and guest in the ballroom stood up from their tables, breaking into a thunderous, rising ovation that filled the high ceilings, honoring the true officer who had stood her ground against absolute corruption. I took a deep, clear breath, feeling the heavy burden of 3 years of deception lift off my shoulders, replaced by the quiet, unshakable peace of earned justice. You cannot fix people who use your sense of duty, love, and sacrifice as weapons against you. For 3 long years, I allowed my family to manipulate my loyalty to my late father, believing that my endurance and my silence were proof of my devotion. I let them belittle my military service, destroy my reputation, and siphon my hard-earned pay because I foolishly believed that keeping quiet was the only way to protect my family's honor. But greedy, manipulative people do not see your patience as love. They see it as weakness to be exploited. They will steal your hard work, claim your sacrifices as their own, and publicly humiliate you, all while playing the victim when their lies fall apart. Real peace does not come from quietly enduring abuse to keep toxic people happy. Real peace comes from standing firm in your integrity, bringing the truth into the light, and allowing the natural consequences of their own choices to dismantle their illusions. Never set yourself on fire to keep toxic people warm.